Come take this journey with me. Everybody buckle up so I can tell you the bad news. Grab your seats. Brace yourself. Errol Spence Jr. Hey, stop that cat. Hey, man down. Terence Crawford. The rematch. It's not looking like the fight will happen next. And that's what we're going to talk about. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Boom. You guys see it on the screen. You have Dan Rafael, and he is saying, it says the Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence rematch reportedly now looks like it's not going to happen. It is claimed that this is due to a variety of reasons, quote, variety of reasons, including the fact that Errol Spence just had cataract surgery recently. Wow. Now, I do think the variety of reasons makes sense. Make sure you guys follow me on all social media. This is my Instagram at BOXINGEGO1. Help the page get to 50,000 followers. Saying that a variety of reasons this fight does not happen next makes a whole lot of sense. And in this video, I'm going to definitely break it down for you guys and let you know why it makes a lot of sense, at least to me. I think the most obvious reason why the fight would not be next is Terence Crawford did such a great job of dispatching of Errol Spence Jr. to the point where he left no questions, and the desire just isn't there for a lot of people. It's like when Mayweather beat Canelo, right? You never really heard in the interim, immediately after that fight, you never really heard a bunch of Canelo fans begging for the rematch. Now, I don't know if that fight had a rematch clause bilaterally, like meaning Canelo had the option or not, because he was a pretty big name even then. No one really requested it. The only person that even had the fight close is CJ Ross, one of the judges who had this bogus scorecard and allegedly seen as a draw. So later, Canelo moved out of the welterweight division, moved beyond 154, 155. Canelo, payday, you want payday, I know that, right? He moved out of like really the realm in which you see Floyd Mayweather fight. And then years later, after he got bigger and stronger and moved up to 175 and Floyd was 45, then you seen some Canelo fans grow a pair and suggest that Floyd needs to give the rematch. But immediately after, there weren't people begging for that rematch because they knew what time it was. And they knew that wasn't something that the world truly needed to see, right? Similarly, Errol Spence, it was a bad beating. I mean, Errol even admits that. He said he got his butt whooped, right? And he said, I didn't live the most disciplined life, yada, yada, yada. So Errol Spence knows, I mean, anybody who watched the fight knows it wasn't a good night for Errol Spence. That's why people are struggling to cope in terms of what was going on with Errol Spence. There's so many different theories. We all have our own, but there's so many different theories. So the point I'm making is Errol Spence, he's a beast, he's a monster, but that night the big fish got caught, right? He got caught by the guy you see on the screen, Terence Crawford. So congrats to Terence Crawford. He did such an amazing job in the first fight that it almost seemed like a once and done, where it's like, we don't really need to see that again. It's like another more recent fight than the Mayweather-Canelo example is, let's say Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade had a rematch clause and he wants the payday and he wants to redeem himself. The way the David Benavidez fight played out and how convincingly David Benavidez doing them combinations and, you know, Benavidez lacing him up, stopping him in the first half of the fight, not really having much friction. You know, I guess I would say Andre did better in the first 1 or 2 rounds. these types of things, it just, even if Andrade had a rematch, a lot of people wouldn't want to see it. And I think that is some of the problem with this Errol Spence fight. So again, to recap, Terence Crawford did such a great job in illustrating his level in the Errol Spence fight. The demand was down, which leads me and perfectly transitions and segues to the next point where I think the fight has issues, is since Terence Crawford beat him so, I can't say easily, because I know Crawford trains hard and he put in work, and it's years in the making to become what Crawford is, and is skilled and good and in mentality and in shape and that kind of thing. So I don't want to, I don't like when people do that. I don't like when people take something you've worked your whole life for and then say stuff like, oh, must be nice. Like, Ego, you're a YouTuber, it must be nice. Like, this was just handed to me. Like, YouTube gives you a manual or something, and all the thousands of videos that I've done and fights that I covered and videos I did when I wanted to do the video, when I didn't want to do the video, when I wanted to produce content, when I didn't, if I had personal problems going on in the background, if I was sick, nobody did the work for me. You wasn't with me shooting in the gym. Kobe Bryant work ethic. So I hate when people try to like minimalize and then just act like something was bestowed upon you. So I don't want to do that to Terence Crawford. I know he's been a beast and he's been working his whole life for these moments, and then he got one and he showed up in a big way. But in continuation of the first point that I made about he beat Errol Spence so convincingly, it didn't really like require the demand for a rematch. Aside from that aspect of it, you have the issue of Errol Spence, since the first fight wasn't competitive, aka the desire for that fight, it doesn't grow. Like, the only way to make a rematch kind of grow, the desire for it, is for it to be competitive, for it to have drama, for it to be controversial. So some examples in boxing of that would be if a fight was like Carl Froch and George Groves, where it was George Groves was getting the best of Carl Froch at ways. And then Carl Froch, the first time he like really hurt George Groves, I'm talking about the first fight, the first time he hurt George Groves and got him in trouble a little bit, and Groves was trying to fight back, the ref controversially stops it. So fans were like, man, that's BS. He was winning the fight. So that controversy helped sell the rematch because people were so disgusted with the referee's decision to call that fight and stop it prematurely. And I agree with that. I think that was a premature stoppage. So that's why you seen Carl Froch keep saying, oh, I did 90,000, 80,000 in Wembley and all that type of stuff, because controversy sells, drama, dramatics sell. So if you have a competitive fight and one guy's winning and then it ends on controversial judge scorecards or premature stoppage, yeah, you could sell a rematch. Another example of this would be Canelo versus Triple G. The first fight marred with controversy. I thought Triple G won the first fight, right? And many others thought he won the first fight. So that's a situation. And then Canelo failed a drug test with clenbuterol. So that's an easy way to transition into a rematch scenario. But the Errol Spence fight really didn't have any of this. It wasn't competitive at all. You know, Errol Spence, the only round you may be able to even give him was round one. And he got dropped in round two, and it was all downhill from there. And round one was just like a nothing round. It was kind of like a fill out round. So it's not like anything crazy happened for Errol Spence's side. Two, you had Terence Crawford, you know, really demolish him after that. So there's no controversy, no controversial scorecards because it ended in a stoppage, no premature stoppage. Like, nobody looked at, I think it was Kenny Bayless, and said he was tripping or anything like that. So it's not like a Rolly Barroso is another fight. You can easily do a rematch on that because of how it ended. So this fight becomes harder to sell, as I've stated throughout the video. And then now you start looking at the business side of it. Crawford did such a great job and almost like a once and done, to the point where people were like, I don't really need to see the rematch. I seen what I needed. So when it comes to these fighters of this caliber and their pay scale and their pay demands, that's going to be hard to really market. You know what I mean? Because Crawford, he's the A side in the business dealings, you know, because he beat Errol Spence, and he's going to want the lion's share of money for obvious reasons. He got most of the belts, and he beat Errol Spence convincingly. Best performance or most impactful performance of his career, right? So he's going to want his demands. But Errol Spence, despite that, he did a lot of great work and heavy lifting. So he's not going to want to get like a small chunk of change. And it's a super dangerous fight. So how do you even pay for this type of fight? Because the way to pay for these mega fights is pay-per-view. But again, if the people seen what they seen and needed to see in the first fight, it becomes harder to sell that as a pay-per-view. And then finally, I would say Errol Spence, he's taken some damage outside of the ring, and he has some medical issues, right? So I think it's a combination. It's like a combination pizza, a supreme pizza, as to why I wouldn't be surprised if this fight, I know this is not my source. This is Dan Raphael, who was the first to kind of reveal this information, but it makes sense if the fight doesn't happen because of the reasons that I've illustrated in this video. You have a non-competitive first fight, gonna be hard to sell the rematch. Let's just recap. Errol Spence has had medical issues in terms of he just had a cataract surgery, detached retina. You know, they might want to try to bring him back because the second fight, let's be real, how you lost in the first fight, your career could be like over, not meaning you have to retire, but the fans, boxing, you don't want to take two bad losses in a row. And I'm not saying guaranteed that's what would happen in a rematch, but there's no indication that based on the first performance where you would probably side with Errol Spence and be super confident, like bet the house on it, because Crawford, again, dismantled him in what appeared to be easier than expected, right? So it just becomes hard to pay the wages and things like that. And the last thing, a bonus point, is I think ultimately the weight. Errol Spence, I don't think he wants to make 147 or even try. And Crawford, maybe he doesn't seem like he even wants to fight Errol Spence because he's like, what's the point? I'm on to bigger and better things. I want to fight other people. And then he can make it challenging and say, like, I only want to fight you at 147. And that creates another problem and another fiasco. I will keep you guys updated. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel. Best in the business, not even close.